Everyone is looking at the headlines about the Middle East, asking the same tired, predictable questions about who is winning or who is losing. If you are stuck in that loop, you have already fallen into the trap set by mainstream media. You are watching the surface ripples while ignoring the tectonic plates shifting violently beneath your feet. We are not talking about a simple military organization here. We are talking about a state within a state, a shadow empire that has mastered the art of survival in a world that wants it dead. This is not about good versus evil. It is about the physics of power, the exchange ratio of blood for leverage, and the cold, hard reality of a system designed to outlast an empire. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC, the Pasran, is not some ragtag militia born from a textbook or a CIA training manual. It was forged in the fire and blood of the 1980s, specifically the Iran-Iraq War. That conflict was not just a border dispute. It was a meat grinder that consumed an entire generation of young men. It transformed a group of ideological loyalists into a steel blade designed to protect a regime at any cost. This is the anatomy of a geopolitical surgeon. To understand the future of the region, you have to understand the DNA of this machine. You have to understand that while the West was playing by the rules of the 20th century, the past Iran was writing the rules for the 21st. Let us look at the blueprint of 1979. The revolution did not just end the monarchy, it obliterated the old world order in the Middle East. When the Shah fell, the new leadership in Tehran faced an existential crisis. They had a professional military, yes, the Artesh, but it was a legacy of the old regime, trained by the West and viewed with deep, paralyzing suspicion. Imagine trying to build a new world, while the people holding the guns might still be loyal to the one you just burned down. And that is the definition of a strategic nightmare. It is the kind of paranoia that births monsters. Then came the purge. Approximately 12,000 officers were cleared out, executed, or forced into exile, leaving a massive, gaping void in the command structure. When Saddam Hussein saw this, he thought he saw an opening. He thought Iran was a dying beast, a disorganized mess, ready for the kill. He was wrong. He did not realize that the vacuum he saw was actually being filled by a new kind of power. A power that did not care about conventional doctrine or Western military ethics. In May of 1979, the Pasdaran was born. It was not created to replace the regular army, but to act as its ideological shadow, its enforcer, and its insurance policy. In the beginning, they were amateurs. They were young men with more faith and training, often relying on the regular army for heavy weaponry and technical expertise. They were the barefoot soldiers of the revolution. But the 1980 invasion changed everything. It was a baptism by fire that lasted 8 long years. War has a way of stripping away the useless and hardening the essential. It is the ultimate filter. By the time the 1988 ceasefire arrived, the Pasdaran had evolved. The Pasdaran had evolved from a paramilitary guard into a parallel military juggernaut. They had learned how to fight without an air force, how to win without a navy, and how to survive when the entire world was rooting for their destruction. In 1987, a pivotal decision was made to give this force its own army, its own navy, and its own air force. This was the birth of a dual military system that exists to this day. It is a masterclass in redundancy. If the regular army is the shield, the Pasdaran is the sword. And that sword is not just for fighting foreign enemies. It is the ultimate insurance policy for the supreme leader, ensuring that no internal coup or external invasion can ever truly decapitate the regime. They built a system where the death of the leader does not mean the death of the machine, but do not make the mistake of thinking this is just about soldiers and tanks. That is the kind of narrow, linear thinking that leads to strategic failure. The Pasdaran is a corporate leviathan After the war ended in 1988, Iran was a shattered shell of a country. Millions of veterans were returning home to a collapsed economy, a destroyed infrastructure, and a mountain of debt. The solution was as pragmatic as it was dangerous. Turn the military into the national construction crew. Give the men with the guns the keys to the treasury. This led to the creation of Qadam al-Anbiya. Today, this is not just a company. It is an economic octopus. It controls between 25% and 35% of the entire national gross domestic product. Let that number sink in for a moment. We're talking about a military force that builds the subways in Tehran, manages the South Pars gas fields, and runs the banking systems. They are the ones who build the dams, the oil refineries, and the telecommunications networks. They are exempt from taxes and answerable to no one but the supreme leader. They are the economy. When you control the money, you control the loyalty. By the year 2005, the reach of this organization had extended into every corner of civilian life. The head of the national police was a product of this system. The governors of the provinces were products of this system. It is a hostile takeover of a nation's soul, executed over decades. They have created a system where the survival of the economy is tied directly to the survival of the Revolutionary Guard. If you want to build a house, you pay them. If you want to export oil, you pay them. If you want to survive, you join them. Now, let us talk about the chessboard of the Persian Gulf. This is where the physical reality of the bon faiteur becomes undeniable. While the United States spent trillions of dollars on massive aircraft carriers and high-tech stealth fighters, the kind of toys that look great in movies, the Pasdaran took a different path. They looked at the physics of the Strait of Hormuz and realized that a $13 billion ship could be neutralized by a swarm of $20,000 motorboats. It is a simple matter of exchange ratios. If you can fire 50 missiles for the price of one interceptor, you win the math of war. You don't need to be better. You just need to be more efficient at burning the enemy's money. The Pasdaran Navy does not try to match the West ship for ship. That would be suicide. Instead, they use hundreds of small, fast-moving craft equipped with anti-ship missiles and mines in the narrow, shallow waters where 20% of the world's oil passes every single day. These swarms are a nightmare. They are the tactical equivalent of 1,000 stinging bees attacking a giant. The giant might be stronger, but the bees can choose the time and place of the kill. They use the salinity of the water, the acoustic noise of the commercial traffic, and the jagged geography of the coast to hide. They are a ghost fleet. This is the essence of asymmetric warfare. It is about making the cost of engagement so high that the enemy decides it is not worth the price of the ticket. We have seen this play out in real time with the capture of foreign sailors and the harassment of commercial tankers. Each incident is a signal, a reminder that the Pasdaran holds the valve to the global energy market. They do not need to win a total war. They just need to prove they can make the world bleed. They are the masters of the DEBIMNGH, and if they close the door, the global economy stops breathing. Then there is the aerospace force. This is where the real strategic deterrent lives. They have spent 40 years building the largest missile arsenal in the Middle East, and we are talking about the Shahed and the QAM series. Weapons that can reach every corner of the region, from Tel Aviv to the American bases in Qatar and Saudi Arabia. They have bypassed the need for a modern Air Force. By perfecting the art of the long-range strike, why risk a $100 million pilot when you can send a $50,000 drone? It is the democratization of destruction. The Shahed drones are the perfect example of this philosophy. They are cheap, they are expendable, and they are effective. And they are essentially flying lawnmowers with explosives attached. They have turned the sky into a mass strat, a matrix of low-cost threats. threats that can overwhelm even the most sophisticated defense systems. When you fire a $2 million Patriot missile to stop a $20,000 drone, you are losing. You are bleeding white, and they are not stopping at the atmosphere. Their space program is not about science or exploration. It is about developing the booster technology for intercontinental ballistic missiles. It is a slow motion march toward global reach, hidden behind the veil of satellite launches. But the most surgical tool in their kit is something much more subtle, much more dangerous. It is the Quds Force. Established in 1990, this is the elite of the elite, a unit of 5,000 to 15,000 operators whose job is to export the revolution. They do not fight conventional wars. They do not wear uniforms in the field. They build networks. They find the fractures in other societies, the religious tensions, the economic disparities, and insert themselves as the glue. They are the architects of the axis of resistance. Look at Lebanon. Hezbollah was not just a local militia, it was a blueprint created by the Quds Force in the early 1980s. They provided the training, the funding, and the ideological backbone. Today, Hezbollah is a state-level military power that can hold its own against any army in the region. And that is a return on investment that would make any venture capitalist on Wall Street jealous, and they did not stop at Lebanon. They exported the model. They franchised the revolution. They moved into Iraq after the 2003 invasion. They turned the chaos of the American occupation into a breeding ground for influence. Groups like the Badr organization and the Mahdi army became the instruments of Tehran. They used these proxies to bleed the American military while simultaneously infiltrating the Iraqi political system. It was a masterclass in playing both sides of the board. While Washington was playing checkers and talking about democracy, Tehran was playing three-dimensional chess and talking about power. They didn't care who voted, they cared who controlled the streets and the ministries. The Quds Force is organized into regional commands, each one a specialized cell for a specific geography. The Ramadan Command handles Iraq, the Navi Akram Command watches Pakistan, the Hamza Command focuses on Turkey and the Kurdish issue, and the An-Ansar Command deals with Afghanistan. This is not a military unit, it is a multinational corporation of subversion. They operate in the shadows, using Iranian embassies as hubs for intelligence and coordination. They are the ghost analysts of the ground war. At the center of this web for over 20 years was Qasem Soleimani. He was more than a general, he was a living myth, a shadow king. He was the man who could walk into a room of warring militia leaders and walk out with a unified front. He understood that power in the Middle East is not about who has the most tanks, but about who has the most loyal friends. Under his leadership, the Quds Force became the most effective strategic tool in the Iranian arsenal. His death in 2020 was a kava, a slap. But the machine he built was already autonomous. The software was already running. The training for these proxy forces often happens at the Imam Ali University in Tehran. This is where recruits from Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen are taught the dark arts of urban warfare, explosives, and propaganda. And they are not just being taught how to fight. They are being taught how to think, like the Pasdaran. They are being indoctrinated into a worldview where the United States is the great Satan and Israel is the little Satan. This is a war of belief as much as it is a war of bullets. It is about the Sungaiti, the naivety which thinks it can win hearts and minds with aid, while the IRGC wins souls with purpose. But even this ideological fortress has cracks, deep structural cracks that no amount of propaganda can hide. And the Pasdaran is also responsible for internal security, which means they are the ones who have to crush the dreams of their own people. We saw this in 1999 and again in 2009, and most recently in the widespread protests of the last few years, when the youth of Iran take to the streets demanding bread or freedom. It is the Basiyaj, the million-man paramilitary wing of the Pasdaran, that meets them with batons, tear gas, and live ammunition. The Basiji is the lowest rung of the ladder, but it is the most pervasive. They are in the schools, the factories, and the universities. They are the eyes and ears of the regime, a network of informants and enforcers that ensures the revolution never sleeps. They are the Chaldi Mawad, right? The bleeding of the Iranian society. But there is a cost to this. Every time they suppress a protest, they alienate another segment. They are winning the battles in the streets, but they are losing the war for the future. They are an aging elite trying to hold back a digital generation. And then there is the cyber domain. The Pasdaran has built a digital army that is just as aggressive as its naval swarms. Between 21 and 22, we saw a massive increase in their ability to penetrate foreign infrastructure. In 2016 and 2017, they decimated the data systems of Saudi Arabian government agencies with the Shamoon virus. They understand that in the modern world, a well-placed line of code can be more destructive than a 1,000-pound bomb. They are targeting the HLUB, is the consequences of a connected world. They know that a blackout in Riyadh is more effective than a missile attack. So where does this leave us? We are looking at an organization that has integrated itself so deeply into the fabric of a nation. It is impossible to remove one without destroying the other. They are the bankers, the builders, the jailers, and the generals. They have built a system of deterrence that makes a direct conflict with the West a terrifying, bankrupting prospect. But they are also a system built on the suppression of their own people and the constant, desperate need for an external enemy. They need the Di Bang, the eagle, to be at the gate so they can justify the chains at home. The question is not whether the Pasdaran is strong. They clearly are. They are a marvel of survival. The question is whether a system built on such intense artificial pressure can survive indefinitely. They have mastered the art of the surgical strike and the proxy war, but they are increasingly isolated. Their allies are militias, not nations. Their economy is a closed loop of sanctioned industries, black market oil deals, and money laundering. They are a shark that has to keep swimming in blood to stay alive. If the blood stops flowing, the shark dies. If the Pasdaran were to collapse tomorrow, the state of Iran would vanish with it. There is no alternative power structure waiting in the wings. There is no plan B. This is the ultimate hostage situation. They have tied the survival of a 5,000-year-old civilization to the survival of a 45-year-old ideological experiment. It is a high-stakes gamble that has lasted longer than anyone in Washington or London expected, but the House always wins in the end. The question is, who is the House? And as we watch the next move on the Middle Eastern board, remember that you are not looking at a government in the Western sense. You are looking at a survival machine, a machine that was born in the trenches of a forgotten war and has spent every single day since then preparing for the next one. They do not care about international law, diplomatic norms, or the rules-based order. To them, those are just words used by the weak to restrain the strong. They care about the exchange ratio, the leverage, and the cold survival of the regime. And the shadows under the water in the Strait of Hormuz are still there. The missiles in the silos are still aimed. The drones are being assembled in nondescript warehouses. And the men who were trained in the 1980s, those who survived the meat grinder, are still calling the shots. History is not a straight line moving toward progress. It is a circle of blood and fire. And in that circle, the Pasdaran is the one holding the torch. Do not be blinded by the light of the explosions. Look at what is being burned. Look at the bone shetkak, the blueprint they are leaving behind. The world is changing. The old empires are fading, their treasuries empty, their resolve weakened by internal division. But in the ruins of the old order, new monsters are being born. The Pastoran is the blueprint for the future of power in a fractured, chaotic world. It is a world where the lines between military and civilian, between war and peace, and between state and corporation have completely dissolved. It is a world where the Vodun, the uselessness of conventional power, is exposed every day by a drone or a line of code. Welcome to the new matrix. Welcome to the reality of the geopolitical surgeon. We have reached the end of this particular biopsy. We have cut through the skin of the headlines and looked at the muscle and bone beneath. The facts are on the table, and the anatomy is clear. What happens next is not a matter of hope, prayer, or diplomatic hope. It is a matter of physics and finance. It is about who can afford to bleed longer. It is about who controls the AI engine of the future. Thank you for your attention. We will see you in the next analysis, where we will continue to strip away the skin of the world to see the bone beneath. Until then, stay sharp. Don't believe the headlines. Watch the money. Watch the shadows. The machine is still running. The 16 shadows under the water are still waiting. The silent acoustic signals of the Gadir submarines are pinging against the hulls of the tankers as we speak. This is not a drill. This is the new normal. The Surtrinks, Tezra, Dunes, pragmatic sobriety is the only thing that will keep you from being a pawn on their board. The Pastoran has already moved. They moved 40 years ago. The West is just now realizing the game has started. That is the tragedy of a decaying empire. It only realizes it's in a fight when its throat is already being cut. Look at the Matrain matrix they've built. It's not just in the Middle East anymore. It's in the supply chains. It's in the cyber networks of your local power grid. It's in the price of the gasoline you put in your car this morning. The Pastoran is not a local problem. It is a global symptom of a world where the cheap and the ruthless have found a way to decapitate the expensive and the civilized. They are the kuva to the face of the 20th century, and the 21st century is just beginning to feel the sting. The survival of the regime is the only metric that matters to them, not your human rights, not your international treaties, not your peace deals. They will burn every bridge, every city, and every soul, if it means the machine keeps turning for one more day. That is the reality of the Ban for Korlai, the great chessboard. There are no grandmasters left, only survivors and the corpses they leave behind. And the Pastoran has chosen to be the survivor, and so far the math is on their side. Every drone strike in a distant desert, every tanker seized in a narrow strait, every cyber attack that goes unpunished, these are the heartbeats of the machine. They are the signals that the old world is dead and a new, more brutal one has taken its place. Don't look for a hero in this story. There are none. There are only surgeons and patients. And right now, the Pastoran is the one holding the scalpel. The question is, are you on the table or are you watching from the gallery? Either way, the surgery is proceeding. There is no anesthesia. There is only the cold, hard steel of the reality they have created. The Hichel-Lubby consequences of ignoring this DNA will be catastrophic. We are seeing the Shahed May-Wad man tranky white bleeding of the Western military-industrial complex as it tries to keep up with a threat that costs pennies on the dollar. We are seeing the SABP-DAPI collapse of traditional deterrence, when the Von Dune, useless nature of an aircraft carrier in a drone-saturated environment becomes undeniable. The world will change overnight. That day is coming. The Pastoran is betting on it. They have been betting on it since the trenches of 1980. And as the Taylor-Trebate exchange ratio continues to tilt in their favor, the Say-Azi and the trap is closing. Stay awake. The Thamhoa catastrophe isn't a single event. It's a process. It's the slow, steady erosion of an old order by a machine that doesn't know how to stop. The Pastoran is the torchbearer of that erosion. They are the architects of the Tejimu New World, rising from the ashes of the old. And as we've seen today, their DNA is written in blood, oil, and the cold logic of survival. The biopsy is complete. Diagnosis is terminal for the old world. The new one belongs to the machine. End of transmission. Stay sharp. Watch the water. The shadows are moving.